Greetings on this most spooky day of the year. I'm not doing much in the way of an explicit Halloween theme, but I thought this day made a good opportunity to address a video sent to me by a viewer named I the Poet. It's truly one of the most spectacularly weird things I've ever seen, yet on the other hand it illustrates some really common tactics used by pastors to manipulate their congregations. It was titled Todd White interviewed What If No One Gets Healed? Watch through to the end, and you will become convinced that, in terms of spookiness, no costume, no decoration, no ghost or ghoul or fog effect could ever match the bizarre majesty of this minimalist one-man show. Enjoy.
So people say, and I hear it all the time, like, what if I pray for somebody and God doesn't heal them?
Okay, I don't mean to be insensitive because I know this topic can be personal for some people. But are so many Christians running around healing each other with their prayers that this is a meaningful hypothetical question? In fact, people not getting healed after prayer is pretty much the norm, the only thing you'd expect. And I would have told you this at any point in my Christian life. Sure, not every Christian will readily admit as much, but almost all know deep down that if someone cuts off a finger and they say, "God, please heal his finger," nothing's ever going to happen. So instead they pray that the person has a safe ride to the hospital, and that God guides the hands of doctors and the person has a speedy recovery, and all the other stuff that's either expected enough or unquantifiable enough that they can be confident that any normally expected outcome will feel like an answer to their prayer. But really asking, what if I pray for someone and God doesn't heal them, is like asking, what if I wake up tomorrow morning and I'm not a billionaire? Life would just be what it always was. So what, and why would you ask such a mundane hypothetical question?
Well, I mean, I shared tonight, actually, about my testimony, and when I saw somebody get healed, I said, I'm going to pray for everybody. And I prayed for, an average of 10 people a day, every day.
Just on a quick side note, if you prayed for 10 people per day, it would take you just over 2,063,013 years to pray for everybody.
And for 3.5 months, I didn't see anybody healed. Sometimes we get the picture that if we pray for somebody and they don't get healed, we're going to look like a fool. That's a big problem, because dignity is not a fruit of the Spirit. Right? And Jesus said you have to be willing to look like a fool, because God confounds the wise. He takes foolishness, he confounds the wise, the wisdom of the wise, right? It's the foolish things of the world.
Do Christians never consider that belittling people who use their heads and glorifying the idea of being stupid, which yes is a reasonable synonym for foolish, is just a little too handy for manipulative religious leaders? I mean, Jesus was basically telegraphing this one, according to Todd's narrative, because I believe Paul was the one who wrote this anyway. So it's embarrassing that people still fall for it 2,000 years later.
So sometimes people think, well, if I pray for somebody and they don't get healed, I'm misrepresenting God. They're not gonna see God in a good way. The truth is that when you're going up to pray for somebody somewhere, they're not expecting anything anyway. You're totally like out of the normal. Like right now anyway. It's starting to change. When I go up to somebody to pray for them, they're like, why? I say, because Jesus heals people.
If you go up to someone and say, Jesus heals people, and pray for them and they don't get healed, then yeah, you are misrepresenting Jesus.
Okay, can I pray for you? I guess. Sometimes that's how it happens. And I pray for them. If nothing happens, and I don't see it happen, I say, can you sense any change right now? No? Okay, let me pray again. I pray again right away. And I say, Father, I thank you in the name of Jesus, God. And just pray again. And then a lot of times people say, I don't know what's going on. I feel kind of like a warm or something. Okay.
What he's describing is a feeling that comes from closing your eyes, slowing down, and receiving personal attention. Basically, he may have induced ASMR in the person, which is not anywhere in the neighborhood of healing someone.
Okay, let me pray again. And just right away. And 1 minute buys the next, buys the next, buys the next, really. And when you're praying for somebody to be healed, if I'm pray for somebody, if I think, what if I pray for somebody and they don't get healed? My question is this: what if you pray for them and they do? What do you do with that? What are you gonna do? Like, if you prayed for them and they got healed, what would you do? What would you think? Like, would you be excited? You'd probably freak out.
Okay, a couple things here. If you're really confident God heals people, why do you need to do this weird street hustlers routine of praying over and over and trying to buy 1 minute and then another and then another? And second, if you're actually planning on addressing the question, what if you pray and no one gets healed? Why suddenly switch to the question, what if the person did get healed? That's not what a person does when, they have an honest, straightforward answer to the question.
Like, it's so amazing. We watch people. I've had so many people that are petrified. Like, I'm not praying for anybody. Petrified, shaking, trembling. Like, I've walked with people that are like, this is totally weird. I've walked with people that are parts of ministries and elders or whatever, and they're like, this is totally out of the box for me, because it's not normal. It's not normal, and I'm not faulting anybody. How would they believe it's normal unless they see it in front of them?
The observation Todd is bumbling his way through really does get at a compelling point. Why do all these people, including people in ministry, not go around praying for miracles? Sure, I guess you can just blame it on everybody's lack of faith, but come on, that's the easy way out. That just gives pastors an automatic internal, thus vague and unverifiable, thought process they can use to shame people for the universe's apparent lack of miracles instead of acknowledging the much more obvious reason for the lack of miracles. I mean, why would God hold his miracles hostage to people's ability to believe what they haven't seen yet anyway? It's just one more example of how theology shapes God so that his behavior conveniently parallels what we'd expect in a universe without him. But regardless, if there were any reliable mechanism by which God's servants could go around healing people, the activity wouldn't be this weird thing that, according to his own observation, they feel it is. In other words, it would be something they saw in front of them, and it would catch on like wildfire in the Christian community, with each observed healing boosting Christians' faith and leading to more healings. The fact that it takes so much effort to get Christians to feel the tiniest inclination that God ever heals speaks volumes here, and I find it implausible that the entire religion is filled with enough doubt to totally squelch the appearance of miracles that would otherwise exist.
That's my whole thing. So when I walk with them and pray for somebody, I don't kick them under the bus and say, you do it. I don't do that to people. I just don't believe that you need to. I believe that we can walk as an example, and that people that don't know that it's real will see it happen right in front of them, and they will say, oh my gosh, this is real.
Yes, and as I was saying, that never seems to happen. So the fact that we never find this kind of momentum building in a Christian community that wants to believe seems to indicate, well,
I've had people get in the car after we leave a restaurant, and they sit in the car and they burst into tears because they can't even believe what just happened in the restaurant. And they might have even fought against healing, like for a long time.
Why would a person ever fight against healing? I mean, seriously, think about it. If there were any reliable indication that you could perform some act that mended your injuries or healed your diseases, would anybody ever shy back and be like, well, I sure don't need that? The very idea is implausible and just stupid. So maybe, just maybe, the problem is not that people are fighting the idea of healing as much as struggling to reconcile their desire to believe in healing with the obvious fact that, well,
Like, I remember specifically, we went to a restaurant, and it was like one of those buffets. And I told the waitress, and I went with a bunch of church leaders, and they were all at this conference that I was doing, but they were all real skeptical, and it's okay. So I'm sitting there, and the waitress comes up, and I told her Jesus loved her, and she like slammed the cup down and walked away. Like, she's really mad. So I'm like, wow, okay. This isn't going over very well, is it?
Way to read the room, genius.
And they were like, what are you going to do now? I'm like, I'm going to get food. So I just went to the salad bar and got food and came back, and we all sat down, and we're just having fellowship and talking. And I said to the girl, I said, where's your manager at? She goes, why? I said, because I just want to talk to her. She goes, over in that office. So I saw the manager come out, and I said, hey, you. I said, I have a question for you. She goes, sure. And I had a word about her back and about her knee. And I asked her, I said, do you have problems in your back and your knee? She goes, yeah. What's going on?
So to get what Todd's going for with this anecdote, you first need to look at people's reactions to him. He says Jesus loves you to a server, and she slams a cup down and walks away, which might have happened but sounds just a little unlikely and a little too much like stereotypical Christian narrative building. I mean, he basically took an angry non-believer from a chick tract and dialed it down a notch. And of course the elders, who were skeptical, but that's okay because Todd understands, and not in a condescending asshole way, are just paper-thin characters who are only written into the story to act blown away by everything he does. Because seriously, they take a step back and are like, what's the deal? Why? Because they saw Todd do one of the most embarrassingly basic level 1 cold readings a person could ever do? Come on. Even if a semi-observant person couldn't notice someone favoring their back and knee, you can get a pretty reliable yes for some kind of back or knee problem from almost anybody within 10 years of my age in either direction. And that's before we remember we're not even watching what he did. We're hearing him tell his best version of it. Whatever.
And the elders are like, what is the deal? And I said, can I pray for you? She goes, sure, but we have to go in the office. I go, okay. So we go in the restaurant. We're sitting in the office, standing in the office, and I'm praying for her. And she is crying and asking for prayer for her daughter and overwhelmed. And the elders are out there, and I'm in there for 15 minutes with the manager. So they're like, what's going on?
Christian elders are like, what's going on? To a pastor who goes in and prays with someone? I was a less oblivious Christian than that before I was a teenager.
And I told him, and the manager comes out. She's crying still. She talks to the elders. I said, you ought to come out and tell the people I'm with what God just did for you. So she comes out. They were like, well, okay, uncomfortable because they've never seen it before or heard it before. They're like, this is really different. So then I see a girl at the table with her mom, and one of the elders kind of walks over with me.
Now wait. He prayed for this woman for this and that and everything else. She starts crying, and he brings her out and tells the elders what Todd had done for her. And then, at that moment, right before we hear about the results of his prayer, he switches gears and starts talking about somebody else? Isn't he going to tell us what happened after he prayed? Was there a miracle, which is what this video is supposed to be about? Even according to his story, we don't know, because he suggests something amazing happened, but the instant the woman's about to reveal her miracle, he cuts her off. It's weird.
So then I see a girl at the table with her mom, and one of the elders kind of walks over with me. And I said to her, and I saw this girl playing basketball. And I said, do you play basketball? She goes, yeah. I said, you're really good, aren't you? She goes, yeah. I said, you want to go to college to play ball? The mom goes, oh my gosh. She goes, she's only in 9th grade. I said, yeah, I know, but she's really good. She goes, she's amazing. The coach said she's going to be able to play varsity next year. And this is crazy. She wants to go to, I think it was Georgetown. She's going to play like, I'm like, this is awesome. I don't remember exactly. It might have been, sorry. I try to be right when I'm sharing. I remember right.
Okay, so here he does yet another cold reading. And in this case, a clearer textbook example of the practice. So let's itemize, according to his own story, what gets said by each person. He says a girl plays basketball, which is a safe guess that can be given away by any number of cues. He says she's good, a broad subjective statement most avid players or their parents would agree to, and that she wants to play in college, which, come on, how many serious players don't? The mom says that the daughter's in 9th grade, will probably play varsity next year, and is looking at going to Georgetown. And he presents these as confirmation of his predictions, when really it's just her feeding him all the real information in response to his safe guesses. In fact, let's watch again and see how obvious it is in hindsight.
And I said to her, and I saw this girl playing basketball. And I said, do you play basketball? She goes, yeah. I said, you're really good, aren't you? She goes, yeah. I said, you want to go to college to play ball? The mom goes, oh my gosh. She goes, she's only in 9th grade. I said, yeah, I know, but she's really good. She goes, she's amazing. The coach said she's going to be able to play varsity next year. And this is crazy. She wants to go to, I think it was Georgetown.
Sad, Todd. Really sad.
So I go back to the table, and that other waitress comes back, and they're not really doing anything but getting our drinks. But I just said to everybody at the table, I said, you know what we should do, guys? And they're like, what? I said, she's pretty mean, isn't she, our waitress? They're like, yeah. I said, you know what we should do? And I took out, I think I had $20 with me. I said, would you guys all pitch in? Let's just bless her. So we took up a tip of like I think it was like $160. So the waitress comes back to the table. We just want to bless you. And we gave her she goes, what? Why? Whatever. She took the money, she put it in her pocket, she walked away. Everybody's like, that didn't work out. I said, no. I said, it's seed. I said, God will get her. So like I walked over and I started sharing with her. Here she just went through like something really traumatic in her life, and she's been really hurt by it. And she believes that God is the one that did it. So I got to share and straighten out all that truth. Just bring truth where the lies are. She hugged me. She goes, thank you so much. You really did amazing today. And prayed for another person on the way out.
When we review this story, we find that everybody falls into neat Sunday school stereotypes. Todd was unwaveringly kind and generous and long-suffering, because he's telling the story, so of course, while the server was persistently mean. But the kind of mean that just comes from having been hurt and is easily reversed by some Christian dude coming and saying the right things. The elders traveling with him, like Jesus' disciples, wavered comically between perpetual doubt and perpetual amazement at everything he did, and everybody else just stood in awe of his amazing works. Suddenly it seems thematically appropriate that the video's opening sequence shows the words Jesus Christ being replaced by the words Todd White Christ. Not only is this story laughably implausible, not only did it never relay a second-hand miracle, which I think was supposed to be the point, but what it suggests to Christians is dangerous. People who have actual real-life problems need to make real, long-term changes based on a combination of personal coping skills, a lasting support network, and possibly professional assistance from people with actual qualifications. The idea that some weird broseph pastor with a heart of gold is going to walk up and turn someone's life around by showing her a little Christian kindness and then speaking a little truth of Jesus to her is comically absurd. But unfortunately, many Christians buy into it. And because they do, they think change comes from chasing some emotional, spiritual high, and thus live in a perpetual cycle of repeating the same mistakes over and over. At best, Todd made some poor lonely woman feel better for a moment with a little charisma and personal attention. But even that's ignoring the very real possibility that, hear me out, this story falls somewhere between heavily embellished and totally made up.
We go out in the car, and the one lady that was probably the leader of all of them, she starts, and I said, are you okay? She goes, no, I'm not okay. She goes, I've fought against this my whole life. How can this be real? I've built my life on a lie. And she breaks down and loses it right there in the car. So her whole life was changed because she saw the example of what it looked like for somebody to walk who has pressed into this thing, that it doesn't matter what people believe. I believe.
Well, if the Legend of Todd Christ needed a few more self-aggrandizing details, there you go.
So, back to your original question. What if you pray and it does happen?
That wasn't even the original question, but fine. You've led us so far off track by this point, who cares?
I prayed for about 1,000 people before I saw breakthrough. I really did.
You had to pray 1,000 times before God gave you a breakthrough? Assuming God exists, that's weird, even before considering that the basically nothing that happened in your restaurant story is what you call a breakthrough.
There are 3 things that Jesus never said. It's not your time. You need more faith. That's what he said. It's not God's timing. He never said that. Or you need more faith. Come back when you get some.
Jesus never had to say those things because he exists in fictional stories where people can just write that the miracles happened. Thus, he had no need to lean on typical real-world excuses for why they don't happen.
Or he never questioned people's faith. Let's just talk about timing. The timing of God, Isaiah says that by his stripes you are healed. 1 Peter 2:24 says by his stripes you were healed. So somewhere between you are and you were, you is. Does that make sense?
No, because the difference between you are and you were is in verb tense, indicating that something happened in the present versus the past. The change to you is just a shift from plural to singular, and thus by no stretch of the imagination places it between are and were. F***ing moron. Look, from this point he just rambles on and on about Jesus in really strange, semi-insane sounding ways that don't advance the discussion at all, and eventually just degenerate into a nearly incoherent series of churchy sounding platitudes flowing out of his mouth in what I can only guess is pure stream of consciousness. And literally all he does to further address the issue is use this stream of ramblings about Jesus to suggest that since Jesus did miracles, Christians should be able to as well. Even though Jesus Christ and Todd Christ only seem to be able to do miracles in stories, and Todd sucks at them even there. But here's the confounding problem. Christians already have an abundance of miracles that occurred in other people's anecdotes. What they're starving for is actual miracles. But aside from rambling incoherently like an idiot, all Todd does is pile on more secondhand stories. These come in two parts. First, old tales of how Jesus did miracles, which Christians already knew about, so a fat lot of help those were. And second, an almost blasphemously similar story about how he, followed around by alternatively doubting and wide-eyed disciples like Jesus was, often scorned like Jesus was, dashing the expectations of the religious establishment like Jesus did, traveled around amazing everybody with his great deeds, like Jesus did. Unfortunately, far too many hurting, sad, and otherwise needy Christians can use real change in their life, real help. They feel they need a miracle, but in a world without miracles, what they actually need is long-term practical guidance and support. And they sure as need, and deserve depending on your perspective, something better than a self-aggrandizing charlatan who wows them with an extended display of audacious false humility designed to keep their head spinning until they stop thinking about why miracles don't exist. The question is, when will they start expecting something better? This program was made possible by a grant from S.R. Foxley, Bob Generic, Brandon Lemire, Bullwinkle, and Q, and by the generous support of viewers like you. If you'd like to join them in pledging to this channel, please find a link to the Prophet of Zod Patreon below.